Hi team, final video for budgetary policy where we will be looking at the strengths and weaknesses. So put simply, the strengths of budgetary policy include that policies can be used to target specific aspects of the economy. So the government might observe the economy and decide to funnel its money specifically into something like healthcare or education. And they can be really specific with this to achieve certain outcomes. Contrast that to monetary policy for a moment, where we said that monetary policy was a blunt instrument that impacted the whole economy, where they did not have the ability to target specific aspects. So a strength of budgetary policy is that it can be targeted. The other strength is the fact that it has a short impact lag. Now, the impact lag is the time between the policy being implemented and having its intended effect. So it's the second part. We're saying that with respect to budgetary policy, this is much quicker relative to monetary policy, keeping in mind that we said monetary policy could take up to 18 months to have its intended impact. Budgetary policy does not take as much time once it's been implemented. Another strength is that budgetary policy is open to public scrutiny through the political system. Okay, so because of the nature of our democratic system, all policies have to go through a rigorous legislative process, which means that there's greater accountability and transparency, and this ensures that the policies are obviously well tuned such that they do have a benefit to our economy or whatever the particular purpose of the policy is. And the final strength that's listed here is that the use of automatic stabilizers are immediate and responsive to economic conditions. So this is a strength that is specific not only to budgetary policy, but to automatic stabilizers. And we're saying that because automatic stabilizers operate, immediately, such that they respond to changes in economic conditions, namely increases or decreases in unemployment, they're nice and quick, and they're going to have their intended impact dampen some of the more insidious aspects of changes in economic growth on our economy. Okay, the flip side is the weaknesses. So the weaknesses of budgetary policy, the first being that political hurdles could prevent particular policies from being implemented altogether, or they could be what we call watered down. Now, this is a weakness in the sense that a policy might be really specific for achieving a certain economic outcome, but keep in mind that the government's bigger than that. Yes, the economy is a major aspect of what the government obviously oversees, but it's not everything. And so not all the policies that are going to be implemented, are going to have that hard economic line. They're going to need to be, considerate of social implications, any other kind of implications, which means that they can get watered down or changed such that their intended impact to the economy is not what they were originally envisaged as doing. They're also prone to political bias. So you've got to keep in mind that because of the democratic system, obviously there's voter bases that need to be sort of, kept satisfied to a certain degree to ensure that political parties maintain votes. So policies may not be implemented primarily for the benefit of the economy, but more to satisfy voter bases. And we do tend to see this happen more in election years, where obviously governments are sort of vying for their positions. The other part is that there's a long implementation lag. We're talking about the time between a policy being proposed and then enacted, so the front end of that timeline, as policies need to go through the parliamentary processes. So if the government implements a policy, we know that it has to go through those legislative processes, which can take a long time and ultimately bring us back to our first weakness, is that they could be changed or watered down. Compare this to monetary policy for a moment, where that's not really an issue, because ultimately the RBA can make changes to the cash rate without needing to go through any of these processes. And the final weakness is that successive government budgets lead to an increase in public debt. I've talked about this one already, which may present taxation burdens for future generations. So if the government continues to utilise budget deficits in order to stimulate the economy through the tough times, and the debt grows too big, ultimately this could present a situation where future generations have to pay for it, because the government is going to need to raise the money somewhere to repay the debt. And so, generally that happens through an increase in taxation. So, kicking the can down the road could be a problem, in the sense that the budget deficit from today and that public debt that's being generated today might become an issue for future generations, who are then going to become responsible for repaying it. You saw this in the last video where we looked at strengths and weaknesses of monetary policy. Basically, this timeline is the opposite. So we're saying that for budgetary policy, it has a long implementation lag, which I previously mentioned, versus a shorter impact lag. If you compare this to monetary policy, it is the direct opposite, where monetary policy has a short implementation lag, but a long impact lag. So just from a visual perspective, trying to make sure you can remember, a suite of strengths and weaknesses to bring to your discussions. It's not the case that you have to remember every single strength and weakness, but I would make sure that you've got at least 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses for budgetary and monetary policy, such that you are well versed in terms of putting on a good discussion when speaking to the effectiveness of these policies. Now, you need to link it through to the macroeconomic goals. That doesn't change. Basically, the next part from here would then be to speak, with respect to these strengths and weaknesses, how they're then going to impact the achievement of the goals for the government, and then the impact that could potentially have on living standards. All right, thanks guys.